So, if you ask any psychologist, they will tell you that it's a mixture. Well, not any psychologist, okay. The majority will tell you that it's a mixture. So, part of it is environment, which is stuff like culture, how you were raised, early experiences, ongoing experiences as an adult, media that you're exposed to, stuff like that. But then there's also like biology. So, genetics is all about your DNA. So, the DNA that you inherited. We don't know the precise breakdown between these, and there is a lot of debate, and it seems to vary depending on the specific behaviors and traits that you're talking about, partially because of this epigenetics, which is, I think this is kind of the thing that connects biology and environment. So epigenetics is basically a branch of biology which is looking at how genes are differentially expressed depending on environmental triggers. So for example, you might have a gene that is only expressed under periods of famine when there's not enough food, or you might have a gene that is only expressed in periods where there is more than enough food. It's really, really complicated. There's like so many layers of complexity because when we're talking about genetics, if you're thinking of like DNA, right? We always talk about DNA as like this kind of abstract thing, but it's literally just like recipes for proteins. So everything that's happening via genetics that's influencing your behavior, what it's actually doing is that there's the genetics in your DNA, and then that is being translated into a protein that is having some kind of biochemical effect on your brain. And then that in turn affects your actual behavior. It's way more complicated than people give it credit for. There's a lot of people that will just go around and say like, oh yeah, genetics does this. But if you're just looking at the sequence of like DNA, protein, biochemical reaction in the brain expressed as a behavior, if you're even just looking at that pattern, there's still loads of places where there can be variation. So it can never just be pure genetics. Like there's always going to be environmental effects on the genetics. So for example, environmental processes can affect how accurately your body reads off the proteins from your DNA, can affect how accurately it builds the proteins. It can affect the degree to which they have an effect in the brain, because remember there's hundreds of proteins and chemicals drifting around, and they're all kind of bumping into each other, and sometimes they do things to each other, or sometimes they use the same receptors. So something blocks something else from getting in and having an effect that it needs to have. And then like with the behavior, like we're not just robots, we are sentient beings. So we might have a biological tendency to do certain things, but our choices can influence whether or not those end up being expressed. It's complicated, basically.